Finma's Literature. Welcome to today's episode. As you all know, and if you don't know, you should know, I'm your host, Justin. And as you can see in this corner is the title of the movie that I'm going to be talking about tonight Poolman. It's on Hulu. As of right now, it's the number one movie on Hulu. Kind of surprised by that. I don't know how they really come up with these rankings. Like, I don't know how this became the number one movie because there's no way that this has the most views of any movie today or yesterday or whatever. There's just no way. This movie came out in 2023. It premiered at the Toronto Film Festival in 2023. Actually got released in American theaters on May 10th, 2024. That was just earlier this year. This is probably the newest movie that I've talked about. Well, newest movie I've talked about by myself. And it's got a pretty good cast. I mean, the cast for this movie was pretty. I had no idea what it was about. I just literally clicked on what was the number one movie. And sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're in the middle. But this had a pretty decent cast. You had Chris Pine as the lead, as Darren, the pool man. Had not seen Chris Pine in a while. I know he was in Star Trek. I know he was in a couple of other things. Just haven't seen him in a while. I remember, 15 years ago or so, it was like, hey, who's the number one Chris? Chris Pine, Chris Pratt. There was a couple, Chris Evans. And I actually thought Chris Pine was going to be pretty good. Haven't seen him in forever. He shows up in this movie. His first directing movie, the first time he's directed a movie. And yeah, I guess, it went okay. I don't know. It was kind of weird. It was very kind of weird. You also had Annette Bening played one of the star leading roles. Obviously, we all know her. Danny DeVito was in it. We all love Danny DeVito. It's always rare to see him now. When you do see him, it's like, hey, it's like Danny DeVito. He doesn't come around as much as he used to. And then you had Jennifer Jason Leigh. We've known her for probably 40 years now. Haven't really seen her in much, probably in the last decade or so. I think this was the first time I've seen her in anything since, what was it, The Hateful Eight, the Quentin Tarantino movie. So it was good to see her. Yeah, so the movie came out in theaters May 10th of this year. It did not do well. Only made $153,000. Was only in there for one weekend, I believe. For one weekend, it was 22nd the opening weekend. 22nd place in America opening weekend. Top 5, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I saw that one that weekend. So instead of seeing Poolman, I was watching the Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes way better. Way better. Not even close. I love the new Planet of the Apes movie. Definitely check that out. Maybe I'll talk about that one day. I love all the Planet of the Apes movies. I don't think there's a bad one yet. I actually like the Mark Wahlberg. I thought about rewatching it sometime soon. It's not really nothing ever really came of it. It's not like it's not part of the story like all the other ones. But the other top 5 movies for May 10th of this weekend was The Fall Guy. Haven't seen that. I think that's Ryan Reynolds. Haven't seen it. Challengers with Zendaya. I thought about watching that. It does look pretty good. I guess she plays like a tennis instructor, and then two guys fall in love, and I guess they kind of challenge each other over her. Number 4 was Tarot. I'm assuming that's probably about a tarot reader. And number 5, Godzilla, King Kong. Haven't seen that yet either. Probably won't see that one. Maybe, I don't know. I'm kind of done with King Kong, Godzilla. I think there's enough of those movies. It feels like there's one or two of those made almost every single year. So I'll probably tap out on that. But as you can see, this movie did not do too well. But now all of a sudden on Hulu, I don't even know how long it's been on Hulu. Maybe it just got released on Hulu. I do not know. But it's number one. As of right now, as of me recording this show, Poolman is number one on Hulu. And I'm really not sure why. It started off really bad. I was like, this movie is going to be really bad. And it kind of, somewhere along the lines, kind of turned me. The story got kind of good. A lot of twists, a lot of turns, a lot of unexpected things happening, but then a lot of weird stuff, a lot of strange things that just don't have anything to do with the movie, I feel like. Don't have anything at all to do with the plot of the movie. Basically, Chris Pine is like a guy that works on pools, and he wants to be an actor, and he gets hired to, I don't even know if he got hired to do it. I think they just wanted his help. And, they were like, hey, can you help us prove that the city councilman, of all people, is corrupt, and it's just like, okay, like this story makes sense. And then there was a couple other things, like what year does this movie take place? Because they kind of act like it's maybe, today's world, but then you got old cars, you got old telephones, but then it's also like, okay, he references Aaron Brockovich, the movie from the 90s. So maybe this takes place in the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't know. And also, do a lot of people watching this movie know who Aaron Brockovich is? Have they seen that movie? The Julia Roberts movie? Have they seen that? Because I don't know too many people that sit here and, talk about Aaron Brockovich. Yeah, it was a great movie. Yeah, it was a movie that everybody talked about at the time, but nobody in 2024 is talking about Aaron Brockovich. So it's kind of weird that they reference that movie, but I do actually love it. I do love that they did that. Me being a person that loves movies, I thought it was great. So the story was pretty good. There was just a lot of weird things about this movie. Overall, like I said, they had me hooked, and then just twist after twist, and I loved it because it kind of flowed. There wasn't ever, after about the first few minutes of this movie, there never really was a time where it was like, okay, like let's move on with the story. Like let's get it together. Let's wrap it up. There never really was a time that I felt that. So this is kind of a weird movie where I don't really know if I should say that it was bad or if I should say that it was good. But it was entertaining. It was very entertaining. It's a movie that I probably could watch again. Definitely could probably watch again. And I do probably recommend that you watch it. I think that you should check it out. Get on Hulu, click the top movies right now. It's on there. It's easy to find. And I think you should definitely watch it. I think it's worth watching. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be one of those movies that you talk about years later. There might be some people, this could have somewhat of a cult following, I could see, but I think the majority of the people probably aren't going to be talking about this 10 years from now, but it is a movie that I feel like is entertaining that you could watch. Maybe you don't know what else to watch. Maybe, you just put this on while you're, cooking or something like that, and you just kind of have it on in the background. But I do think it's kind of worth watching. It's rated R, which I thought was kind of weird. I don't really understand why it was rated R. Um, maybe PG-13 for sure, but hey, I'm always for R rating. I think an R rating gets me a little more interested in movies. PG-13, it's kind of like, okay, this is going to be a little childish, but R ratings are kind of like, okay, this is going to be adult story, adult theme. Makes me a little more interested, especially now that I'm an adult. So yeah, I think R rating was okay with this. I don't know if it really fit into the R rating, but let's move on to some of my categories I like to talk about here on Film as Literature. Favorite character. Kind of hard to choose. I feel like, maybe most people are probably expecting it to be Darren, the Chris Pine character. Maybe you want it to be June, the lady that basically, hires him to be the detective. But my two favorite characters are Diane, the Annette Bening character, who plays, I guess she's the manager of the apartment complex where Chris takes care of the pool. And she's also like his psychiatrist, I suppose. But I like her because she's very level headed. She basically is kind of like the voice of reason throughout the whole movie and kind of guides him to where he needs to go. And she was just like, this movie, it was tried to be a comedy. They tried to have a lot of comedy in it, and some of the comedy failed, some of the comedy hit, but it seemed like anytime they needed to come back down to earth, there was Annette Bening there to kind of, be a straight shooter and put us back on track. So definitely liked her. And then the other character that I really liked was Jack, played by Danny DeVito. How do you not like Danny DeVito? Pretty much anything that he's in is probably my favorite character. He's just a great actor. He's always entertaining. He can be funny but serious at the same time. And in this movie, he was kind of over the top. His character was a little over the top, but not like way over the top. And by what I mean by that is like, he was focused on himself, and a lot of the stuff that he was doing didn't necessarily have to revolve around what was happening in that scene at the time. Like one scene they were Darren had just you know, been accused of murder, and he was sitting there trying to figure out what to do. And, Jack is over there on the phone with his agent, trying to get a job. And it was just like, that's perfect. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy. That's the kind of stuff that I think that, some of these comedy movies need, where it's like a character that doesn't necessarily you know, revolve around the plot. He's just, yeah, he goes with the plot because Jack filmed a lot of stuff. He was basically the cameraman for Darren. But at times it was like, oh, I'm just doing my own thing and, continuing on with the story. And, another character that could be talked about is Wayne or Dirk, as we find out, because apparently he was an undercover cop, played by John Ortiz. I don't know who he is, but I like that character. I think he was pretty good too. He every time he showed up, it was kind of like he was making a mistake. It was kind of like like where's this coffee from? Like what are you doing here? Like how did you get here? Like oh my God, you're sleeping with my girlfriend. And then he turns out to be the undercover cop. That was a big twist. I loved that part. Like I said, the twists in this movie, some of them made sense, but whether they made sense or didn't make sense, they wrote it perfectly to where it was entertaining. And that's always the key in a movie is entertaining the audience, keeping me entertained. And always, the beginning and the end need to be entertaining as well. The beginning was a little slow in this movie. I wish it would have got to the story maybe a little quicker, or maybe started off a little bit sooner with some comedy. It kind of started off as if it was kind of going to be a serious movie, which this movie tried to be serious at times too. But I think overall it's definitely a comedy movie, but they could have started off, I think, a little better. So that part was kind of a downgrade. My least favorite character, and this one could be a little controversial, but my least favorite character, honestly, is Darren, played by Chris Pine. I think it's not so much the character. Maybe it is the character. I think he was a little. Obviously, he's not. As they even say in the movie, he's not playing with a full deck of cards. But at times they made him too dumb or too out there, and I don't think they needed to do that. But also the biggest problem I have with this character, and it was probably Chris Pine himself. Maybe this isn't the kind of movie that Chris Pine needs to be doing, but the whole time, almost the whole movie, every time that he's really being comedic or really being outlandish, being over the top, he reminds me so much of a Brad Pitt character. Maybe like Brad Pitt in Bullet Train, for instance. Like I think that was a very comparable role. Maybe even Brad Pitt in 12 Monkeys could be comparable. But that's what Chris Pine, I think that maybe that's what he was going for. That seemed to me like what he was going for. And every time it got to a part, like I said, where he was outlandish, over the top, where I think he was trying to, to pull up that Brad Pitt, it made me think of Brad Pitt, and then I kind of lost interest in the character. So I think they could have just pulled the Darren character back a little bit, maybe even, make him a little bit smarter, maybe a little less over the top, a little less like Brad Pitt. And I would have been for him. I would have liked him because there were times where I was like, this dude's awesome. This is a great character. This is very well written. He's comedic. His timing on things are right. His obviously Chris's acting was great at times, but overall it was just too much. They could have just pulled it back a little bit, and that's why I think Darren is definitely my least favorite character. Favorite scene. I have multiple favorite scenes, and then you can kind of group a bunch of them together. And that is when he writes to Aaron Brockovich. I just love it. I love that they keep going to it. It's like, okay, we're not just going to go to this once. We're not just going to go to this twice. We're going to go to this multiple times because it's funny. Because it's, maybe it's going to make people know who Aaron Brockovich is. And I love it, man. I love that they keep going to that. I thought it was awesome. There was no payoff, though. I wish there would have been a payoff. Maybe such as Julia Roberts making a cameo at the end, or just something. There needed to be some kind of payoff for that storyline. And the fact that there wasn't was a little sad. The fact that it wasn't was a little sad. That's another failure. I think that's another thing that definitely keeps this movie from being great. But the fact that they kept going to the Aaron Brockovich, I loved it. He did it every single day that the movie covered about 5 days, I think, 5 or 6 days. And, every day he writes a letter, and I love it. I just love it. And also, I really kind of like close to the end when they catch who was it? When they catch Mr. Patterson and June, when they catch them together, and they basically solve the case, and Dirk becomes undercover cop. I like that scene. It was a good ending. It was a good, let's wrap this up. Everything makes sense now. And the way that Darren, was like June was like, yeah, that's my dad, blah, blah, blah. And then he looks up and it's the picture of them together and it says future Mr. and Mrs. Loved it, man. Reminded me very much of like the Naked Gun. That seemed like that would have been a scene with Nielsen, Leslie Nielsen. Sorry, Leslie Nielsen. Seemed like that would have been a scene, uh, with him in a movie. I loved it. I loved that part. The ending, that was a perfect ending, which then brings me to my least favorite scene. They ruined that by kind of continuing the story after they solved the case. Not continuing the story, but continuing the movie after they solved the case. And it just, I feel like we just didn't need like that last 5 minutes. Like we didn't need him in the courthouse giving a little speech again. We didn't need him, with the prologue, I guess, the talking after the talking at the end. We didn't need all that. We didn't need that. Like we honestly didn't. If you wanted to wrap it up, you wrapped it up by them solving the case. It was perfect. And if you wanted to continue it, there were so many other ways to put a cherry on top, such as Aaron Brockovich, such as, maybe, I mean, I really don't know what else it could have been, but I wanted to see something of Aaron Brockovich, so that's my main problem. And I think that was what I was really upset about was that they continued this movie for about 5 minutes too long, and there was no payoff, nothing that satisfied me. So I think they just handled that wrong. I think they could have done so much better with that ending. They almost stuck it and then they didn't. It's like they had it. They had a good ending. They had it. It was like a nine out of 10, and then it was like, oh, we're gonna go for 10. We're gonna try, and then they just fumbled it and dropped down to probably about a 7. So good job there. Also, just didn't really like the part where he was meditating. Every time he would meditate, like in the pool, I just didn't really like it. I didn't really understand. Like, he saw the lizard. I get it. Like, it represents like somebody like betrayal. But I think we could have done without those scenes. Honestly, like I don't think they really helped the story in the long run. I think we could have got to those points. We could have got to those points without those meditation scenes, and they were just a little bit confusing. I think so. I could have done without those as well. Could The Rock have been in this movie? I think The Rock as Darren would have been cool to see. I would love to see The Rock do some kind of weird comedy like this, and maybe he has. I don't know. I haven't seen all The Rock movies because let's be honest here, most of them are pretty bad. But I think if he was to do a movie like this where it's pretty much just kind of this off the wall comedy and kind of this off the wall story, I'm all for it. Rock, do a movie like this, do something different. It's time. You know, some of the movies you've been doing recently just aren't living up to expectations. You're might be WWE champion again, who knows? But do a movie like this, man. Come on, do it. You got to change it up a little bit. All the best actors at some point do. I mean, Robin Williams, one of the best comedic actors of all time, did some serious movies. Adam Sandler also tried to do some serious movies. So come on, man, just do something like this. Like change it up a little bit. Nudity. Could nudity be in this movie? Did this movie need nudity? We actually had no nudity. I'm kind of surprised by it. I'm kind of surprised. I'm very surprised we didn't see like a Chris Pine, like, butt shot or something. I'm surprised that we didn't see something from Danny DeVito because, he's been known to do that. And, in the first few minutes of this movie, Chris Pine and Jennifer Jason Leigh are kind of getting it on. And they kind of, I was like, okay, cool. Maybe we'll see something. But, Jennifer Jason Leigh, we're always down to see her. I mean, always. Like, I think we all love her. That's how we got to know her. That's how we got to know her. That's how we found out who Jennifer Jason Leigh was. So could have had that. DeWanda Wise, who played June. All for it. All for that, too. That would have been great also. But we got nothing at all, which is very surprising, especially for a rated R movie. I feel like a rated R movie should have a little something maybe, but they don't all need it. But I think maybe that would have helped this movie a little bit. Actually, maybe not. Maybe it wouldn't help this movie, but I just felt like what we saw in the first like 10 or 15 minutes, I thought it was going to lead to something. And could they make a sequel or a prequel or turn this into a TV show? I mean, I don't know how you go into a sequel with this, although it wouldn't surprise me if they made a sequel. I think this movie came out in the 90s. I think it probably would have had a sequel. I think if this movie was more successful, it definitely would have a sequel. A prequel is just out of the question. But, I definitely feel like you have a sequel if this movie's more popular. But a TV show would probably be my pick because we don't need a prequel. I mean, what do you show us afterwards? A sequel, I mean, maybe he finds himself in the same predicament, but then it's just like, okay, we're just seeing the same story. How do they make this one a little funnier? But a TV show, I think, can continue the story or just turn the movie into a TV show, just basically redo it, change it up a little bit. I'm all for that. So I don't know. I don't know. I think there's no really good answer there because even as a TV show, I feel like I'm probably not watching. I feel like it probably won't last more than one season. So there really is no good answer on that one. I feel like so overall. That's kind of my thoughts on Pool Man. Kind of went through my categories there. There's not really much else to say about this movie. It is what it is, man. I think they could have done a lot better. They had a decent chance. I like some of the things. They made it seem like it was an old timey movie, but like there's no time on this movie. Like we don't know when exactly it takes place. It feels very old school Hollywood, but it looks new school. So yeah, I mean, overall, decent job. Overall, I applaud them. This was an entertaining movie. It kept me entertaining. It only lasted like a little over an hour and a half, which is also good. 100 minutes, less than 100 minutes, an hour and 40 minutes. That's perfect. Any movie that can keep you less than 100 minutes or below, is usually enter, you know, just doing its job of entertaining you. Like you don't expect a movie of this length to be an all-time great, to be a classic, but you want it to entertain you, and that's exactly what this did. So all you people out there, the Pool Man or just Pool Man, sorry. All the people out there, Pool Man on Hulu, check it out, watch it. Maybe you'll enjoy it. Maybe you just got nothing to do for, 2 hours later on this week or this weekend. Throw it on, see what happens, see if you enjoy it. Make sure to comment. Let me know if you like it. Or let me know if you agree, where it's kind of like, kind of like in the middle, like I am. But overall, thanks for watching, and I'll be back at some point. Check you later.